Recording in progress. All right. Beautiful. Hello, my name is Jonathan Kelley. I'm the co-founder of the Lawndale Pop-Up Spot, which is a community museum in a shipping container in North Lawndale. We're at the southwest corner of Douglas Boulevard and Central Park Avenue in the new and continuously improving Love Blooms Here Plaza. Literally every day something new is popping up there. So we're super excited to be bursting into summer, and we're super excited with the exhibit that we have going on now, which is called Moving Freely. And today's event, in honor of World Bicycle Day, is a conversation with the curator, Mechiya Jamison. And so, like I said, we're going to do this pretty casually. I'm going to have Mechiya introduce herself and ask some questions. And if anybody in the audience has any questions, feel free to include them in the chat or raise your hand and we can unmute you. And yeah, we'll just sort of let it be kind of free flowing like the exhibit itself. So Mechiya, welcome. And would you like to let us know a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, hey, thank you for putting this together, Jonathan. I'm Mechiya. I just graduated from UIC, so I have a degree now, a bachelor's in urban studies and public policy. I am an artist. I like to call myself like a creator from the divine. I'm a singer, songwriter, poet, placemaker, curator, just all around holistic creator. And somebody who is like very dedicated to liberation work. Yeah.
Cool. And tell us about your scholastic program. How did you get into it, and what was it? How did you get into it, and what did you take from it?
I was born in Chicago. I was raised in Atlanta. And so, we would come back and forth. I would come here every summer. My family's from Inglewood on the south side. And so I was always thinking about coming back to Chicago for school. And senior year of high school was a blur. She was so long ago, she's in the past. But I originally was supposed to be an art historian. So I was in art history. I've always been like an artist. And I took AP, I took AP art that year. And I was like, cause I do visual art too. And I was like, I'm glad that I took the class because I was like doing art on deadlines in this way where it's like painting. I was doing drawing and painting at the time, not really my thing. So I like applied to the art history class. The art history program, and I got in. And then, so I realized that I was coming back to Chicago, and I was actually scrolling on the website where all the majors are, like that part of the website. And I stumbled upon urban planning and I just started reading about it. And I was like, this sounds cool. Like, I think I want to do this instead. So I called the school, I called UIC and I was like, hey girls, like, let's talk about it. I really, really I want to be an urban planning person now. And they were like, girl, take a couple classes first. Like, you have to actually be here before you can change your major. So that's like how I got into urban planning. I took one semester, or no, my first semester, I took one urban planning class, and it was a sustainability class. And I just feel like it was so meant to be because sustainability is something that like also that I'm heavily focused on, and that's something that I don't really see myself taking my eyes off of because of my own personal reasons, but also just like the system that we live in and like the state of being that we live in is honestly a constant state of unsustainability. And so like the concept of sustainability really hooks me onto urban planning. And I realized like everything that we see, like all these buildings, even like how far apart trees are, that's all because of like urban planning and like an overall designing of a space, which is something that's always been in my line of sight. I definitely, I just like the idea of making a place, and we all need a place. So yes, that's how I got into urban planning.
And how do you see urban planning and art connecting, or do you?
I definitely see them connecting because, and honestly, it was so easy transitioning from art history to urban planning because a lot of art history is just the studies of civilization. like a lot of like our early ideas of art and the things that I was learning in my art history classes were just how people were expressing how they were living. And urban planning is just like an expression of the needs of honestly what I see it being and what I think it should be. It hasn't been historically, but what I see it being is an expression of what we need. So it's like as simple as like recycling bins, like being in an accessible place because we want to live sustainably, or just like the distribution of green space across an area. That is like a design, especially when you think about Chicago's history and how it's such an industrial city. All of these decisions are very deliberate. And just like the decisions that you make in a painting, or just like the decisions that you make when you're writing a song, any way that you express, to me, it's all expression. So like I relate it under that umbrella.
Okay, interesting. So I want to get to how you used art in the exhibit in a little bit, but sort of chronologically, I want to know about what your journey was to the pop-up spot and this exhibit. So how did you get connected to this project, and what was your initial idea of it when you did get connected?
I got connected through my advisor, Carlos Lopez. He told me, oh, he sent an email to me with the description of the position, and he was like, "You should apply for this." So I applied for it, and I was really interested in applying for it because I've heard of Equiticity, and I heard Obaye speak, who was the founder of Equiticity. And so like that's what got me interested in the position, and that's like how I got connected with it. My initial vision for the exhibit was, well, before I didn't really have an idea of like the space because I had never been there before. Like I actually had never been in a shipping container before, so a lot of firsts. But um I was picturing um sort of sort of like what we have now, but in like honestly like a bigger scale. So when it came to the baths, for example, I initially pictured a bathtub in the exhibit, and sort of having like this clear plastic over it and having um these like these little pieces of information that sort of connect joy and water, specifically Black joy in water. Um, I was picturing like a campfire thing outside. I was just picturing a lot of different elements coming together. The infographics pretty much stayed the same for me. I think I had that was a consistent line of vision all the way through. But yeah, initially I just didn't really know how big the container was. So I was like, yeah, we're gonna put a bathtub in here. There's gonna be this, and this, and this, and oh yeah, yeah. It's honestly, I'm reflecting a lot right now. So I'm like, wow, I did have like all of these different things come to mind, but I think
Was it was it tough when we broke the news to you that there wasn't going to be a bathtub?
it was kind of hard, honestly. I was really dedicated to it. I was like, maybe it'll come.
But we still have the baths. Do you want to talk about what those are for people who haven't visited yet?
Yes. So the baths, I guess I should start by saying like I'm an urban gardener, first of all, so I have a very like intimate relationship with plants. But also I am like a holistic healer, and somebody who just like uses nature and our natural elements. Like I see myself as part of an ecosystem. And so like a part of being a part of an ecosystem is having that connection where you're giving to the plants and the plants are giving to you. So I very much had that type of relationship. And this actually like wasn't initially going to be a part of the exhibit, until like one day, like I just made this bath. It was on Valentine's Day, and I was just thinking on love, and I was just thinking on like sweetness. And around that time, I was reading a book called it's sort of an anthology because it's like a compilation of different stories, but it's about land justice. The name's not coming to me right now, but there's a concept in the book that draws from like bell hooks, which is actually like she talks about the splendor of life. And so when we talk about Black history and like just the history of Black people we talk about how even like through chattel slavery and even through just like honestly every minute here is like a trial and tribulation. But when we talk about just like the history of being Black in bondage and in under oppression, the things that keep you feeling human and keep you feeling alive and keep you breathing in an easeful way is like nature, you know, like the plants, the animals, the sky, having just all of these access to like clean water and air. That is like the sweetness of life, the splendor of life. And so I was like thinking about that concept a lot, because another piece of that concept is when Black people are taken out of like out of natural environments and thrown into cities, and specifically with the development of like urban development, urbanization, and the development of the inner city. Um, there's a lot of implications because you take away that sweetness of life. So it's um, like the implications on physical and mental, emotional, and spiritual health are just very dire. So I was thinking about that as I was in the bath, and I was just in the bath. I was having a good time. I made the bath, and I kept playing music as I was in the bath. And I'm honestly very paranoid, so I don't like to have my electronics near water. But I was like really into it that day, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna add this song and add this song, and I just really felt moved to put it in the exhibit and to give it away because I want people to be able to have that healing through water, because you can't really have joy without healing. Joy is definitely a part of healing. So yeah, those are the baths.
And they're just little jars
uh
with this liquid in it. And people are like, what exactly is that?
yeah.
And on the top of it is the QR code with the playlist. So if you haven't gotten a bath, I think at least one of our visitors here today has gotten one. But definitely check it out. There's still a few left for the 10 days or so that the exhibit's still open. So we've been talking a lot about sort of natural resources, the elements, history. But one of Equiticity in particular's real initial interests when Obai approached us was showing just a photo exhibit of cycling events that took place last year. Can you elaborate on a little bit on that? I know that you weren't connected to those as they were happening, but what was your understanding of that? And how do you go from pictures of cycling events to liquid baths on a shelf?
I think when it came down to the mobility rituals, which is like the ride, like that was like the name of the ride, the mobility ritual, to hear that sort of clicked something in me. I'm like definitely a ritual person, and like just the importance of naming ritual or claiming ritual is something. That process is like intentional, and intention transforms everything. Like you can, if I'm like putting this lip gloss on, and if I'm just like putting lip gloss on and I'm just putting lip gloss on, but what if I'm like, this is the magical lip gloss. Anything I say with this lip gloss on, that's like and then that's like the intention. Like if I did that, something would really come true. I don't know. I really liked the intention of the mobility ritual instead of calling it just like the environmental justice bike ride or the just like a generic name. The mobility ritual really sparked that sense of intersection within my mind. So coming into it and thinking about the mobility ritual, I understood it to be yes, like interactive and a learning space, and a community learning space at that, where you're learning about the connections between communities, where you're learning about communities and their individual histories and their individual contributions to like a larger Chicago. Um, when I was introduced to that, when I was looking into that and looking at the pictures and just seeing like the smiles on people's faces, and honestly the sense of power that came from um, just like that collective energy of being all in one space, generating all of that power at one time, that really took shape. It made an impact on me because I could just read in between the lines of what that meant for everybody. Like for some people, I could see, I'm like an emotional person too. So like I can just see emotions on people's faces and I can hear it in their voices when I was watching videos and stuff. And so I think the like the emotions of the people, the intention behind the name, and just the work that Equiticity does, um, really made me want to include like the rides, of course, but sort of take it to a place where it's like, where did all of this come from? Like, why is it important to be in, not my hat, why is it important to be intentional about mobility? Why is mobility important? Where does mobility come from? And why is it more than us? Like, why does this feel like more than a bike ride? You know what I'm saying? Like, why does this feel like a space where we're actually coming together and doing something? Because it is. And that's like what I really wanted to put across. And that's why I like the cycle thing. That's where the cycles came from, actually.
Okay, can you talk a little bit more about that for people who maybe haven't seen the exhibit yet?
Yes. So cycles of justice and the cycle of justice and the cycle of injustice. It's a concept that the wheels are like Wheel of Fortune wheels. So the cycle of justice nods to how community is honestly justice. So much of justice, so much of our rights, so much of the luxury of having what we have comes from the tireless work and often like the creativity and often the suffering of people, of community members coming together and taking and pulling the veil over inequities, because oftentimes like inequities are just covered up until they cannot be covered anymore. So with that, with the cycle of justice, I wanted people to spin a wheel and they land on a letter, and then they see there's like a recipe box next to the wheel, and whatever correlating letter you have, you pull out one of the cards that has the letter on it, and it's just things like listen to your neighbor, or take care of yourself, or like when you're voting, use a voter guide, like just different ways to be conscious within your community that allows us to understand that we're part of something, and that way you'll be conscious of your actions, and that way you understand that like what you say and do matters and affects the next person. And then around that, I have different like community initiatives that really just like are honestly like saving people. Like I have a Blacks in Green initiative where they were like helping people get their water turned back on. And I have different like public transportation initiatives, like one by the NLCCC and one by Alvejo, um, and the African Heritage Garden, because that's a win, because our connection with nature is so important to like our overall connection with one another. And then the cycle of injustice is really you spin the wheel and you land on a color, and there's a guide that sort of explains to you what each color means. And then there's an apothecary drawer where you can pull out different things that are reflective of whatever color you got. So one example is disparities in public transportation between like the north, south, and west sides. And there's just experiences and the experiences that I got were from Kate Lowe, a study done by Kate Lowe and somebody else. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting their name. But they did focus groups that highlighted the experiences of Black people specifically on the South and West sides. Yeah, so you have experiences, you have quotes of people being like, what is happening? Our street lights won't be turned on, our public transportation is this. And so it's like, it's things that we all see, and it's things that these people are affirming. And then there's statistics that are like cemented, I guess. But I really wanted to focus on the experiences, because I feel like a lot of statistics are just people's experiences that are validated and compiled by a hierarchy. And so it's like before these people's experiences become statistics, I want to highlight them before that, because they're still important and validated regardless if they're coming from an institution or if they're coming from the mouth of a community member.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So without pretending to speak for an entire community, it is World Bicycle Day, and I'm curious to know what you think of as the role of bicycles in sort of generally, liberation, and specifically in um, community community building or community connections, specifically within the Black community, and specifically maybe in a neighborhood like North Lawndale.
Um, I think so you're saying like the importance
Do you
of
think bikes have a role in this? Do you think they're connected? Do you think they're just sort of, because I know, some people see bikes as being sort of a white thing, or a something that's sort of being brought into an uneasy relationship within specific communities. So do you see it as being a potentially um, positive force in the community? And if so, how, and are there ways in which it could be done right?
yeah, I think bikes, I think any well, I was gonna say any kind of mobility, but that's not necessarily true. Just when you think about like cars and like how crazy they are, and just like how much work has to be done around cars in terms of sustainability. But I think bikes are definitely important for just us as a community because um, what you were saying about like things being deemed as like white things, um, that's really because of access. So widening the accessibility to bikes and to like biking infrastructure, biking is just like good for you and it's fun, and it's, if you like it you like it. And also there's a lot of stigmatization around like certain types of bikes. Like I'm thinking about in the DMV area, like when they ride bikes, like these motorbikes, and they be ripping and running these streets, and it's like illegal and it's like demonized. And so it's like that makes me think about um, how just like our different forms of mobility are stigmatized. Um, so definitely, I think that it's important for us to like have access to these things because we should, because there's no reason that we shouldn't. And I think anything can anything that somebody has a passion for, because people, like, honestly, I am not really that good of a bike rider, and that's really just the truest tea. I am not really that good of a bike rider, but when people ride bikes, like when people like bikes, they really like bikes, and I always want that for us. um yeah, definitely. I hope that answered the question. Did that answer the
Yeah, I
question?
think you touched on it. And if anybody else of the thousands joining us today have questions or ideas or comments, again, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. But I want to keep on this theme of bicycling because, as someone who's been at the museum pretty much every time it's been open, one of the stars of the show is the stationary bicycle that was lent to us by one of our partners, Working Bikes. And it's pretty good. Do you want to sort of talk about that and how it connects with the rest of the exhibit, maybe both spatially and conceptually?
Yeah, so the stationary bike, yeah, she's definitely a star. Everybody loves her. The stationary bike is, for me, is like a metaphor for how individual power contributes to collective power. Like when you get on the bike and you see like the lights light up around you and you hear the record playing. And if you're really good, you see the projector screen for just 3 seconds. Like you feel like you're a part of something. You feel like you made something happen. And that's a feeling that like we all can invoke in like these very honestly, it's really connected to the cycle of justice. Like so much of the of the message is connected because you see like all of these community initiatives and all these ways that you can contribute to a community, and then you're on this bike and you're generating this power. And um, to me, it's just about it's really trying to answer or respond to that stigma of like my voice doesn't matter, like my vote doesn't matter, what I say does not matter. And so it's a response to like that helpless feeling that is really familiar, especially in like crazy, crazy, crazy times like this. So um yeah, the cycle is fun. And then also just the records that we have are just really good records. Like nobody's touching the record collection.
Or as one of the young people who came by today called it, the DVD.
Not the DVD.
It's like, side does it play on? And I was like, it plays on both sides. He's like, what is it made of? And I was like, well, it's made of wax. And like, is it just one song? And like, different bands have different songs on them. I mean, this person was born in this decade, or this past
Wow.
decade. So trying to like, when I was his age, that all we had was records and some tape players, some cassettes. So just translating those ideas was a really exciting experience. Like, how do you get it out of the paper? This paper doesn't need to be here. Like all this, the sleeve, it protects Miles Davis's work or whatever. Yeah. And I mean, Miles Davis, he loved the jazz. He thought that was really cool. But that was one of the most fun things so far that I've had, is just like, what is this big round thing that I'm listening to?
I love that. That's so fun. That's like an intergenerational education. Look at all that. That's very common too, that intergenerational exchange, because that was happening a lot at the opening and on the Street Love Riot Day. So I'm glad that's happening.
Yeah. So I want to talk about two other elements of the exhibit, and then we can again see if there's any questions. But can you talk a little bit about waiting?
hmm Waiting is just waiting was honestly like a very like spiritual experience. Honestly, every time I look at it, I'm just like my little heart just does a thing. Waiting is was really important for understanding like how mobility is tied to freedom and ease. Like when I say that I want to and that what we did in the exhibit was expand the narrative around what mobility means and what mobility feels like, and honestly humanize mobility. That was the way that I wanted to do it, because for one, North Lawndale is a Black community, and so when it comes to Black people's relationship with water, it's very visceral. It's very complicated, and it's something that is like genuinely still an issue today, in all of these different ways, like emotionally, spiritually, and physically, like our access to clean water, um, and how we interact with recreational water. Um, so waiting was just really important. It was just a tool to show that like while mobility justice is, these concepts, these experiences that directly involve the transportation that we know in this century today, it also has to do with um, how our freedom and ease is inhibited by systems that we pay into, and that systems that are supposed to protect us and that continue to not do that. And that's really what waiting shows, like when it comes to, and I wanted to show like a duality, because my relationship with water has grown so much, and it's because I've opened myself up to it, and I understand it as like a sense of, now it's a part of me and it's always been there, but when that relationship is cut off, there's just no healing there. And like I said, healing and joy are like very connected. So it's important for us as human beings. 70% of our body is water. We need water to survive. It's a right. And it's something that's helped us, which is something that I've shown in the timeline, which I love that it's a timeline too, because you get to see just like these parallels throughout history. Like, yes, there's like the 1919 race riots, but there's also libation that we use to honor our ancestors and that our ancestors respond to. And that's like those are like those are like, like a century ago, or even more. And then you bring it to modern day, and there's still issues that are being presented to us by the state, not by ourselves. Because on the flip side, you have people you know, praising their water deities, and you have like Alvin Ailey's Wade in the Water from Revelations. Like that is an invoking of water, and that's an invoking of spirit. Um, and yeah, you just have all these different ways that you can connect with water. Um, and so yeah, I just really wanted people to see water, see themselves as like a piece of this sacred thing that we all have and that we all share, and see that like also how it's like unfairly weaponized, and that way we can respond to it, you know, like taking the veil off. Yeah.
Hmm.
Some water real quick, it's right here.
Speaking of water, um, I so I want to go outside now, and just talk a little bit about some of the elements outside. Number um, one of your ideas was to do a flower bed as a way of honoring and thanking some of the co-sponsors of Moving Freely. So that included El Vejo, the Little Village Environmental Justice Organization, NLCCC, the North Lawndale Community Coordinating Council, Working Bikes, of course, Divvy Lift, which was very generous in their support of the exhibit and really helped make it possible with their financial support, and Boxing Out Negativity as well, which had the bike ride about a week and a half ago that ended at Love Blooms Here Plaza and gave you a whole new group of people to show the exhibit to. And I was just wondering how you came up with the idea of this flower bed and what you wanted that to sort of represent.
Yeah, so the flower bed, I remember when you were telling me about what to keep in mind when thinking about like the curation of the exhibit, you were saying, you know, to utilize the outside and the inside. And so just like as like an urban gardener and farmer, I think that having plants is just important. They just keep the vibes right. They clean the air. They just keep the vibes. They just keep the energy leveled, and I just feel comfortable around them. But so I was already thinking. I was like, we should definitely have some type of plant, something involved. But what made me think about it the way that we did it was just this whole thing is honestly it's directly tied to collective power, and that's something that we continue to draw on. And so when it came to our sponsors, of which a lot of our sponsors are just like directly contributing to what we're talking about, I just felt it right to give more examples of community partners, not only because they're our sponsors, but because they're like doing really important work. So yeah, that I thought of using the plant bed as a way to allude to that, like to these like instruments of collective power, and putting their names there allows people to read them and like ponder and be and allows them to like maybe decide to support one of these organizations, which was really the my main intention. I also wanted to have mirrors in there, but honestly, who like knows like how? I literally was like, I don't know how. It was the last priority, you know, maybe one day, but yeah, that's how I thought about the plant bed though. Yeah.
Yeah, and something that just occurred to me when you're talking about power is just the remarkable natural phenomenon of photosynthesis that the sun itself becomes um, a force of power for sustaining life, not just by warmth or energy, but the actual growing of the plants that we consume. So the fact that that's playing out in the growth of these plants, and some have grown a little bit. One of the flowers bloomed. Another one isn't doing quite as well, so I think we might be putting a geranium there, because we have beautiful geraniums that would look great there. So things, it's a cycle of life, right? Things go in, things go out, much like people. And that's another thing that I remember us talking about in our conversations is that communities change, people change, people grow, communities grow, and our ability to harness each other's power for making the change be as positive as possible is really something that we need to really grab onto and use. The only other thing I wanted to ask about was the logo and the graphics. Can you talk about how those developed, and maybe this would be a great opportunity to thank some of the people who helped with that.
Yes. So the logos came from SAIC students. We did like a collaboration with Charlie Corwin's environmental justice class, and I wish I could say their names. I'm really thinking of Kirsten, because she was the point person, and like I didn't directly speak to a lot of them like that. I wish that we did, but SAIC students, like 5 of them in a group, they turned it out. They put it down. They created this logo, and it was just a process of just explaining. It really honestly helped me like keep my vision concise, and just like be flexible with my vision, and take design elements into mind, just giving my ideas to them and having them respond to that in that way, where I was like, okay, if this is like if they didn't understand what I was saying, I was like, okay, I'm taking that and I'm like making my idea more concise. So I really appreciated just like one, having other people to like speak to about what was happening, because like this is my first time doing it. But yeah, they made the logo that we'd be putting everywhere. They they really helped like with they chose the fonts, which the fonts are like just like the perfect fonts. I really like the fonts. The fonts. The fonts were just like the perfect fonts. They really had a lot of movement in them, which is what we wanted. Yeah, and they really helped my like when I had to redo the graphics at the last minute. Like they like just looking at what they had already like made, and sort of just like mimicking that on and like obviously like making my own tweaks and stuff, but like the way that they sort of like laid stuff out, I was like, okay, this was what I like approved of. So it made me not want to not judge my own things when I was remaking the graphics at the last minute too. So it really helped a lot. I love y'all.
Yeah, and it was their idea to put the river on the outside of the container, which isn't something that we had conceived of. And I just thought that looks really cool, and it makes the container so much more almost three-dimensional. And we just went with it, painting. You don't see very many exhibits or art institutions or just remake the outside of their space, just for an exhibit. Sometimes it happens, but it was a first for us. And it also helped connect the themes, the thematicism of the bikes with the water. It helped us connect the inside with the outside, because the timeline similarly uses like this three-dimensional blue fabric as sort of a river theme to the timeline. And it really stands out when you're just sort of walking along or biking along or busing along Central Park Avenue. It's really cool to see. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, this is going to look really cool. And I'm glad that we were able to incorporate it. And thanks to the the SAIC students who actually did the painting, as well as Alexandra Antoine and all the volunteers who helped us. It's been really a collaborative experience from so many people, sung and unsung. And that's what I think the best curation and exhibitions are really about, or like taking maybe a singular or group vision, but really being able to trust a lot of people from a lot of different spaces to contribute and to make something bigger than any one of us. So do you have what were your thoughts about doing media and being on TV and being a curator this is your first curation, is that right?
It is. Yeah. That was it's been crazy. It's just been kind of, I don't know. Actually, a fun fact though, it was honestly surreal just like being in interviews because when I was younger, um I was like, when I was like a kid, I wanted to be an actor, like a pop star. I was like a pop star type of kid. I might still be a pop star. I'm gonna still be a pop star. But um when I was younger, I would always practice interviews and like I would ask myself questions. Like I would like, so yeah, it's been funny coming back to this experience and like having all these interviews because it's like, honestly, I low-key like prepared for this like 10 years ago. So I was like, honestly, more than 10 years ago because like, what? Not me being in my 20s. But yeah, it's been cool. It's been like, just interesting to talk about what has been happening. It's been really cool to reflect. It's been really cool to see that people actually like care, and that's what makes me like. That's what makes me. It makes me excited because it's like it's really not even just about the exhibit, but it's about like the message of the exhibit that the exhibit is putting across. It's about um, using Black joy as resistance, and it's about like allowing people to understand and allowing people to humanize mobility and use that and use what they learn. So it just makes me feel really good that the every time I talk about this, that somebody else may hear about it and then somebody else like may be inclined to learn about what it is that like I read and wrote about, and um, it just makes me feel good. And yeah, I don't know. I was like, wow. And then I got to a point where I was like, am I? I was starting to question myself because I was like, am I saying the same thing over and over again? Like, don't become a broken record. Like, be inspired. So it just caused me. It caused me to like re-inspire myself and like reassess like the work that we did and allow it to move me and not say something that like I thought somebody wanted me to say. So
Yeah. Would you, if you had to do all over again the last 5 months or something, if you were to reconceptualize it, are there things that you would change or things that you would add or subtract or anything like that? Or do you think it's where, you know, is it perfect?
I don't think it's perfect, but I don't think I would do anything different because um I think that like we were really rolling. I think that we did literally everything that we could. We were literally rolling with the punches so hard. Like I'm really proud that we actually one that we did it like in a timely fashion. Like we did it at the time that we said we were going to do something. So like completing things by their deadline is already like enough for me. And that was honestly a tight deadline, especially while I'm working two other jobs. And it's not like I'm was working with the LCC, so I was doing heavy writing. Like we were working on the ethnography project for a little village, so it's like for community, which is something I take really seriously. So it was like I was already doing that heavy writing, and then I was taking 15 hours of other classes, doing all of that heavy writing. And so I feel like we did exactly what we could. I feel like it came from even we were stressed and it was like just like really like emotionally and mentally draining. I think that I just feel good knowing that we put every single inch of what we had into the exhibit. So yeah, that's a good question though. I don't think I would do anything different at all. I don't think I was capable.
Well, I just want to say for the record that you put so much of yourself into it in unusual circumstances, and you took the leadership that was necessary, and really present something that I'm super proud to present as the co-founder of the pop-up spot, and I think has really resonated with a lot of people. And um, it's on the one hand a shame that it's only open for a month, because I think that a lot of people aren't going to necessarily be able to experience it in person, although elements of it will certainly live on the internet, possibly in future spaces. But On the other hand, I really, the limited nature sort of heightens the experience, and I think has brought people out who are like, oh, I can do it that other some other time. No, do it now,
Yeah.
Experience it now. And we have somebody who experienced it who has joined us today. That's Dixon. And in the chat, Dixon mentioned that they rode up from the Southwest side, and that was an experience in itself. Dixon, I don't know if you want to, if I unmute you, if you are there and want to share your, let's see if I can do this even. Yeah, if you want to share that experience, and if you have any questions or thoughts or anything you want to say.
You got me. Yeah. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed the exhibit, and I really liked, like, it kind of went to some unexpected places for me. Like I saw it on social media, and I'm like, this is not too far from me. Let me come check it out. And I was expecting it to be kind of exclusively bike focused. And then I came and I saw everything else that was going on, and I was like, oh, this is, I really appreciated like how broad of, how broad of an approach it was, and everything that was put into, what is a small physical space, and also, just all the places that it went. But so I really liked that. And, but it's interesting because biking up from the Southwest side, it was like, it's not a route that I'm unfamiliar with, but, just taking in the exhibit and then biking there and biking home, I was seeing like how different the streets that I was riding on were from one another, even within the same neighborhood. Like going down Central Park was pretty nice. There's a bike lane, and then going down 31st Street was a little bit tighter. And then going south on Kedzie, it's like, that is not a street that's designed for bikes or pedestrians at all, especially between 31st and I-55. So it was just interesting to see, like, what the streets are designed for, what they're used for, what shape they're in because of that, and how that like changes dramatically within a split second. And that's just kind of the nature of the city too, how dramatically things change from one block to the next sometimes. But within the context of taking in the exhibit that day, it was definitely kind of interesting to, to have that on my ride as well.
Yeah. And do you want to just let folks who are watching this in the future times know a little bit more about what you do?
Sure. I head up the bike group for a not-for-profit community organization called the Southwest Collective. We're organizing neighborhoods on the Southwest side. I'm in Archer Heights, and we have board members and volunteers and programs in Brighton Park and West Elston and West Lawn and Garfield Ridge and Clearing, and kind of neighborhoods around Midway Airport, south of 55. But yeah, kind of the, the reason that we exist is, a lot of these neighborhoods on the Southwest side, are typically and historically like separated from one another, whether that's, geographically separated or, just in terms of like neighborhood identity. And really, they're not that different from each other. If you go from one neighborhood to the next, you'll see like, this is pretty similar. Hi.
You put this too tight. You put this, the lid is too tight.
There. Okay. The lid was too tight, so I had to fix that.
There.
But yeah, so we kind of just want to like get people in neighborhoods that have not been encouraged to make common cause together, to make common cause together. That's it in a nutshell. And obviously bikes are a good way to get people together. And I've been biking in the cities since I was a teenager. I mean, it's something that I really like, so I'm invested in it. I enjoy it. And that's just kind of what I can bring to our group. So
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. And Mechiya, thank you so much again for taking the time to do this interview or this conversation and to share your vision with us at the Lawndale Pop-Up Spot and in the community of North Lawndale. The exhibit is up through June 15th, Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from 1 to 4 p.m. and also by appointment. In 2021, for those who are viewing this in 3021. You can also visit us at www.lawndalepoppupspot.org/movingfreely. There's links to some of the articles and interviews that Mechiya has done on that site and photos. And then if you're at all interested in donating to help pay some of the bills that we incurred in putting this exhibit up, our museum is always free. Then you can visit equiticity.org/campaign, I believe, and make a donation there. And just a note when you make the donation that this is in recognition of moving freely. So any last words for us while we have you here, Mechiya?
Thank you all so much. Thank you, thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are watching right now. I just want to express my gratitude for everybody who opened their eyes and their hearts and their souls to the exhibit and their brains to the exhibit. And hopefully, hopefully it'll travel. Hopefully the message can continue to be put out there. And yeah, I'm just super grateful for the experience and for everybody who's like supporting and encouraging us here. And thank you to Lawndale Pop-Up Spot and Equiticity for making this happen. And thank you to Jonathan, because you know what? They didn't see what we saw. They didn't see what we saw. They
Nope.
did. So shout out to you.
All right. All right. Well, I'm going to stop recording and we are